I was learning how to write. I was learning the craft.
Well, shit, a lot of these stories would make really good, books.
I actually started with poetry as a kid because I like the rhyming stuff. So I used to write poems and stuff as a kid.
Where I cut my teeth and learned a lot was from reading a bunch of the screenwriting books and then writing a bunch of crappy screenplays.
Ever since I can remember writing, started writing stories.
I think writing becomes like a drug. Like once you start, it's really hard to actually stop yourself.
Instead of going out with your friends, you're inside chasing the dragon of having breakthroughs with stories and characters and finding those perfect lines.
Use the rhythm of the story to, control how the audience sees the story.
And if you just read the words on the page, you're not engaging in it.
You can tell more of a story with a facial expression than you can from a huge word balloon taking up half the panel.
Sometimes as a writer, you wonder what the hell you're doing.
If you ever think that, am I just making, in a Kantian sense, am I just making this up? Am I really alive? Am I really experiencing? Am I just an illusion?
The problem with fiction is reality.
You do not want your reader to feel let down.
I can do this. I think I can do this, but I want to do this.
Like when you give somebody a piece of poetry, and it can be someone who hates poetry, and then they read it, and you see that light hit, and you go, oh, I did it. All right, welcome to another episode of Writing Prose, and I am joined with such an awesome panel. I've got Will from Black Flag. How are you doing, Will?
Hello, Shae. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. We've got Phil next to him. You might know him from, Magic Cop, maybe Lost Pages, doing really great this week.
True. Thanks for having me. Finally on here. She forced me to be here. She messaged me, said she would hit me if I
threatened physical violence.
Yeah.
That'd do.
Oh, look at that. We even got a representation of Magic Cop.
Hell yeah.
And an ash can.
And an ash kid.
Both times. And you get a little pop toy with it.
I love it. There you go. See, this is what's great about this is we all just support one another. It's so awesome. Below the wonderful Phil, we have Mike Odin. I will refer to as Odin because we have too many fucking mics.
Yeah, it's okay. I've been doing that for like the majority of my life at this point, so it just comes with the territory.
Fair enough. And Odin is for Elysian Fields.
Yep.
Which is
we just got funded on Friday, so we're now in demand. So
nice.
Hell yeah.
Yes, that's awesome. And then below me is Luke. How are you, Luke?
I'm good, Shae. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm here. I'm ready for the shit show. Because that's what we're good at around here.
Right? Rolling deep into chaos. Let's go.
Exactly. We might have a couple more people popping in and out. We've got some really frustrating internet issues going on right now, and I'm just going to blame the rest of the world being crazy. But I will say, I'm really excited that I've got at least you guys on, and we're going to be talking all about characterization. So, Luke, this was your suggestion.
It was.
It was.
Indeed.
So,
give us a definition.
Yes, I'm wanting to hear your take on characterization.
All right. What makes the character tick? What makes this character different from that character? Is it their thought pattern? Is it their speech pattern? Is their dialect? Is it the way they will walk into a room and look around at things? Like what makes a character that character? That to me is characterization. Like the essence of that character that will, guide them through the story that you're trying to tell. So, they react to the events that are going on, and you have to be honest with their reaction. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, anybody have a different kind of take?
I don't think so.
That'd be good. Yeah,
it kind of hits the nail on the head because it's like characterization is that whole thing. It's like how it's how you write a character. It's it's the whole thing of, if you were to go into your character's room, what would you find in their closet? What would you find under their bed? It's all about the ins and out of what your characters are, and making sure that when you're writing your book, that no one character is the same. Like, you should be able to strip away. Like, if you're reading a comic, you should be able to strip away all the pictures and read dialogue and be able to tell, okay, these two are different people at the very least. Like, I can tell these are two different people.
Yeah. I think that's probably something that a lot of people have a hard time doing, especially because a lot of people have a tendency to interject a lot of themselves into what they write, and it can be really difficult to not do that for every single character. Like, you can interject different aspects of your own personality if that's what motivates you to write, but every character that you write can't suffer from crippling depression, and every character that you write can't be the raging bitch. Like, at some point, the only reason that you have, it's kind of like the reason that evil or good exists is because we see evil in the world. Otherwise, there wouldn't be good. It would just be without evil.
Light without dark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, out of curiosity, what is the panel's favorite kind of character to write?
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, I'm coming at you hard 6 minutes in.
I like it.
All right.
Rough.
I really like when I'm writing characters, and I think a lot of this just also has to do with the fact that I like to talk a lot.
Yes.
So,
You? No.
me? Oh my goodness, no. No, but I do really like writing very kind of in their own head characters, where they talk they'll have a lot of inside thought, and they
internal monologue and stuff like that.
I think those are probably my favorite type to write. The most fun would definitely be, I think I really like writing arrogance. That's always fun. I like making a character that somebody wants to shove down a freaking a pit.
Somebody people wouldn't mind seeing put into a garbage compactor. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. Gotcha.
Yes. That would be a fun character for me to write. That Iago archetype from Shakespeare, where it's this guy's literally just here to piss people off.
Right. So what about you, Will? What's your favorite character to write?
It's a kind of a difficult one for me because I'm not very good at it. That's not really how I'm trained. It's to start from character up. I know you're supposed to start from character up, I guess. But to me, characters emerge as a consequence of the thesis of the world, right? Mm-hmm. So the way I approach it is, okay, what's the world? And that's my favorite part, is the world. So you have a world, say it takes place in Blade Runner time, Los Angeles 2019. Mm-hmm. You've got world wars and pestilence and off-world colonies and replicants and artificial life. Okay, what kind of character is that thesis going to produce? And to me, it kind of goes on autopilot from there.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a certain kind of person. Now, to me, characterization is the fun variable in an otherwise plotted story, right? Because you can have a plot and then you get to A, B, C, D. But what allows you to kind of have some fun with that is the variables inherent in human, being a human, right? So you would logically think someone would go from A to B, but they might decide to go to Z, because they're depressed or they're crazy or they're arrogant, right? That's what I think characterization helps out a writer, is that they put that little spice of variation in there.
Okay.
And otherwise, just a plot.
Yeah, no, that's true. All right, Phil, what about you?
So I think this, for me, the answer to this question changes a lot because growing up when I was a kid, I my parents would say I have the flavor of the month, which would be like anything that I would attach myself to.
Mhm.
For a little bit, it was Mr. T, or the X-Men, and it was like for that month, I'd be all in on that.
Yeah.
And writing, and especially writing this new book where I'm dealing with multiple characters, that's been super true to me. Where I'm like, oh, I really love doing this with this character. I really love doing this thing. Right now, I really love. I mean, this isn't really a specific character type, but I really love heroes that get the shit beat out of them.
Yeah.
So I've been reading Berserk, and Guts gets the shit beat out of him constantly, and it's awesome. But he always, kills the guy he's beaten up, right? But he is just bloodied to a pulp, and I think we lose that a lot in stuff we're writing because we don't want our characters to seem weak. But that weakness lets the reader feel for that character more, feel the emotion and the pain that they're going through. So that's something I want to bring out more in the future stories I write. And it kind of like it can make a godly character seem human,
Right.
for the basic thing of seeing them bleed. So that's something I'm excited about right now. But I just love characters in general. I'm so glad that I'm on this show right now because the reason I love writing is because of characters. I love the different characters, and I love injecting, personalities into them that I come across in life. That's one of my favorite things in writing.
Nice. All right, Luke, what about you?
I think some of my favorite characters to write are probably the ones that are polar opposite to me. Like how would I react to a situation? How would this character react to to that situation? Being the polar opposite, and then take that and tweak it back just a little bit, so it's not quite a cartoon or a parody, but more of a realistic approach. I think it's fun to write characters that are nothing like me.
Yeah.
Like soft, quiet, yoga loving people that listen to Enya and whatnot. Being able to write somebody. What? I don't know. I'm not hip on all the yoga lingo anymore. But like writing somebody that is a lot more quiet and not quite so for lack of a better term, loud as I am.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite type of characters to write because in order to make that believable, you've got to really work at it. You can't just throw it out there. I could very easily make a character that's just like me. We've all done it. And, okay, it might feel real, but it gets a little boring when it's just self-insert fan fiction all the time.
Yeah.
You got to try something different.
Yeah, no, that's very true. So if I were to answer this question, I actually don't know. And that's not me trying to have a cop out. I don't think that I've ever actually sat down, with the exception of a children's book. I don't think I've ever sat down and actually wrote a story that followed one character and their growth and their arc and everything like that. I always go for short, impactful, emotional, like one-page stories or really like quick burn kind of poetry and stuff like that. And for that, it's usually whatever the hell I'm feeling. So I guess the character is me, which is super narcissistic.
I mean, are you doing short stories with this, or are you doing poetry? Because it's
so I do both. I actually sat down and wrote today. It was a one-page. Like when we say short story, it is a one-page story about a girl that I named Kara, and basically kind of her struggle with depression. And how it's a cyclical thing that kind of keeps her as a prisoner to her bed. But normally when I do this kind of stuff, it's really, I have one distinct purpose in mind that I want to get out. And I craft an entire world, a situation, whatever, around that one point that I need to have made. So Kara doesn't exist beyond the fact that she has crippling depression and goes back into her bedroom and goes back to sleep against her will. That's it. That's the amount of her character development I don't know if she has kids. I don't know if she's got a job. I don't know any of that stuff. Oh, we have Jerry. Jerry, welcome.
Jerry.
How are you, sir?
I am good. I drove up here to the library. We have like 4 other cars sitting here.
Nice. So Jerry is having internet issues, but we are going to try and see if we can't hold on to him for a while. We were just talking about characterization and what our favorite characters to write are. So what would be yours?
I kind of like it's kind of one character, but it's 2 characters really. It's like the straight man and the comedy relief. You know, so I really like playing with that dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a classic kind of back and forth to have, but it's hilarious because if you ever take just one of them and you don't have the other, everything about them changes. Maybe you have the one who's just the comedian the whole time without the straight man. He's the annoying one that doesn't ever seem to understand anything, that always is kind of stupid and a little slow and just, you just hate him. But then if you have just the straight man, that's just an asshole.
It's such a trope, but it works.
It absolutely does. It really does. So we have a question for Gabe. So he says, if you're writing characters who are nothing like you, how do you prepare for that? That's a good question.
That is a good question. You know what? I don't know that I necessarily do prepare for it. I just kind of, I guess it depends on how you approach a story. I approach a story based on a scenario. I think, what if this? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
What if this was going on here, and then a character pops into my head and just kind of discover that character as I go along, and I find out that they are much different than me, you know? I don't know, it's as much as I don't like Mark Waid right now, he did say something rather profound in this Countdown to Wednesday DVD that I have. Writing is the voyage of discovery. If he doesn't know how the story's going to end, then they can't figure out how the story's going to end either. You know? Am I rambling?
No.
It's hard for me to tell sometimes. Okay.
You had something that was profound. It took me a second to kind of digest it.
Okay.
No, I think with characters, that aren't like you, I think for me, for my characters, there's something that I could agree with kind of like in each of my characters, like either an aspect or like maybe there's something in a character that I wish I could be, like especially with like superhero stuff of like, oh, we always want to aspire to be like a hero. So I think there's a little bit in my circumstance, there's a little bit of myself glimpses in the characters that I come up with and write.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for characters that I want to write that aren't like me, I've got ADD. So like my big thing is I've got like a whole bunch of stuff in my head at once, and so the way that that helps me kind of write different characters is I think about characters from that I've seen in like other things, and I kind of try and visualize how they would say something, right? Mm-hmm. So like if I was going to write a superhero book, and let's say I somehow ended up lucking out and was writing for DC on Batman, and I was writing a segment with the Joker, I would like start to think of like all the segments of like the Joker and the Joker in like Batman the Animated Series. Yeah. Start to think, well, what's something that I could imagine like Mark Hamill's Joker saying? Mm-hmm. And that would be that's a character that's very different than who I am.
Right.
And so like, and at the same time, even like Batman. So like, as I said, I talk a lot. Batman's very stoic. You're going to get like maybe like one sentence with like 5 or 6 words out of Batman at a time. He's very precise. He's the kind of person that his actions speak louder than his words. And when he says something, it might not be much, but it carries weight. And so like, right. Like those are the things that like I go through is like, I imagine these like, I don't want to sound like a psychopath, but I imagine these like voices in my head of like how I imagine each character to sound. And I usually like create reference points for my own self. Like when I was writing, when I've been writing Elysian Fields, I'll have like, who do I want my version of Heracles to be like? And I'll go through some stuff, and I'll be like, okay, so this is the voice that I think is authentic to how I want to write Hercules. And so then I'll keep that in mind whenever I'm writing his dialogue.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're right. It's natural to hear voices in your head. I'm just saying.
Well, and so I don't know how the rest of you guys kind of feel about this. I know for me, when it comes to characters, like I have a personality that I'm kind of a social chameleon. I tend to just kind of adapt to whatever my surroundings are and kind of blend into a bunch of different kinds of situations. So I've learned a lot of empathy, and by learning a lot of empathy, I've learned a lot how other people think and feel and how they process things. I've also talked with a lot of people because for a while there, my major was psychology. So I sat and I talked with people about why certain things hit them a certain way or why they felt the way that they did about stuff. And having that kind of understanding and being an empathetic person, I was able to kind of tap into something that I've experienced before that is maybe not the same motivation, but the same general feeling. Like maybe I haven't had this exact experience, but I know what it feels like to feel like you were betrayed by somebody you trusted. And so I can say, okay, it wasn't the same, but
Sure.
You're experiencing this and probably at a much higher level or maybe a little less level than what I had, and kind of figure out how that character would feel in that situation. So that's something that helps me, like what I just said with Kara. I took her story to the place that I have a little bit of depression. I took her story to what it feels like my depression is going to drag me into. Not where I actually go, but where it feels like I'm going to go if I don't fight against it. And I just kind of let my mind go, okay, let's just pretend that we're going there. And not gonna lie, I finished typing it and then I was like, well, I'm gonna cry, I'm gonna have a drink, and then I'm gonna get back to this. Because it hits you like it's real.
Well, I think that says something about plot, because you're saying, you're going to a place where we're pretending like we're going there, and that's exactly what plot is. You've got these characters that, especially in comic books, it's usually like some fantastical situation. Not always, but it's usually some fantastical situation that you would never be in yourself, but you've put these characters there, so you have to learn to relate to, you have to put yourself in their shoes to relate to the situation that you yourself put them in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think that it's really interesting because you mentioned the whole feeling the weight of your story, and that's actively. It's funny because Phil was talking about Berserk earlier, and that's actively what's been preventing Berserk from constant hiatuses. Is because Kentaro Miura literally, and he said this in multiple interviews, is like, I get really depressed after writing a few chapters of this, and I just can't. I'm getting old.
Well, and that's the thing I think is funny is because in my head, I'm really big on mental health awareness. I'm really big on why people process things the way that they do. And this is something that, like, I stand up and I talk about real heavy shit from my life in front of an auditorium of hundreds of people that's also being streamed around the world to various other units. I've done this multiple times. And so for me, I was like, sitting down and writing a book about something like this should be like second nature to me. And the second I sit down and I start, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I didn't expect to have to experience it as much as I do, because in order for me to even start writing it, I have to be a little bit in that mind space. And then once I'm in that mind space, it's so easy to just lose yourself to it.
Yeah.
That's why I have good people around me. Like, I sent my story off to a couple of people and I had people going, do you need a hug? I'm like, no, I'm good, I swear. They're like, are you sure? I'm going to send you a hug anyway. I'm like, okay, thanks.
Well, that's a compliment.
I was like, hey, at least you felt what I was feeling or what I wanted you to feel. That's something. It's a little heavy maybe, but
the power to move you.
Yeah. What about you, Will? You're being quiet.
Well, I don't have trouble writing characters that are unlike me because I think I'm kind of boring. I think everybody has that autobiographical impulse when they're first writing, and then you get it out of your system with whatever. Like, for example, you said you write these one-page stories about a person, essentially just different variations of you, but they're one page, right?
Right.
You don't think you could sustain 400 pages of that?
Oh, absolutely not. I
Right,
get
so
very sick of myself.
These one pages, kind of, you get it out of your system, and I've done that already. So now, what I have is, once again, a variation of what I said when we were talking about what characterization is. Which is I've read enough history, and I've been around enough where nothing really surprises me what anybody does. I'm not really appalled by things. So I think what you do is you say, what's the world again? What are the forces moving around the world? And then you try to encapsulate them into a person, into a group of people. Mm-hmm. And then the conflict comes when the dialectic between these people bang against each other and they produce friction and sparks, right? Because if you have two immovable forces, let's say communism, fascism, and they slam into each other, you're going to get some interesting conflict, and and the variability, like you said, the unpredictability is who's going to win. Right. Now that could be on a macro level, as Germans versus the Soviets in World War II, or it could be on a micro level in the brothers Karamazov, where it's an atheist and a Christian banging against each other, right? Mm-hmm. Who's going to win? So I'm kind of cold about it. I just see it as things moving around, like celestial bodies moving around in an orbit, and they're moving each other. Mm-hmm. That's how I kind of see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're tools. Characters are tools that we use as writers.
Exactly that.
Semi-autonomous chess pieces.
So that's why it can be a little less complex for me, because Shae, it sounds like it's much more complicated for you because there's a lot of emotion in there.
Oh yeah.
And you're sort of trying to disentangle it, and you can maybe get writer's block from that.
Yeah.
But I see it more detached as, like I said, a petri dish. The elements are stirring around. Mm-hmm. And some elements are going to cohere, some elements are going to push other ones out of the way. And the story comes about all the directions those little molecules are being pushed,
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that right now, me pulling everything from my emotional experiences and my own feelings and everything, while it's producing stuff that is really good at hitting chords with other people and making other people feel things, long term, there's no way that this is sustainable, because I can probably use bits and pieces of it, but if this was going to be like me as a writer, this was all I was ever going to do, I'm either going to end up on some kind of medication to handle all of this shit, or I'm gonna run out of stuff at some point, because I'm gonna feel tapped and drained, and it's like when you sit down and you talk with your friend, you have that one friend who comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm really going through some stuff. Can we talk?" And you're like, "Oh shit, yeah, we can." Because if I say no, I don't know who else you're gonna talk to. But damn, I'm really not feeling like this interaction. That's kind of me in my writing. When I sit down and do my writing, I'm like, "Fuck, all right, let's get it out, let's do it." And then after I'm done, I'm like, "Oh, I kind of like that. That's kind of good."
Feel better about it.
So go ahead. Sorry.
I think doing what you're doing, Shae, is a great place to start.
Yes.
Because I used to write poetry all the time. Mm-hmm. I love poetry. And starting in that shorter format could a lot of the time let you understand your characters a little more and quicker, especially if you transition from doing that into something like writing 4-page short comics.
Right.
Because it kind of helps you with the pacing of a story. You need to hit your points of action and a specific amount of page count, and then you could interpolate that and expand that out into a larger issue of a comic. And especially if you're working on, like, if it's a 4-page character piece, like I have in the bonus comic for the Lost Pages, that helped me understand the characters. It's like, okay, this character is thinking this in this short amount of time, a situation. And if you look at other poems, like how Poe would write his poetry. Like my favorite poem of his is El Dorado, and that is a grand story within itself in 4 stanzas. You have this knight going on this adventure to find the city of gold, and within 4 stanzas, years seemingly have passed from the start of the story to the end, where he's just this withered man encountering death, and death telling him that basically he's had the city of gold the whole time and it's life, and now he's wasted his whole life searching due to his greed, and he dies at the end. The death carries him out. So within a poem,
alert.
Yeah, it's a great poem. So within that short amount of time, he's told you a story that's lasted for years. So I think starting like that, like what you're doing, is a great place to start. You just have to, use
Be willing
those.
to go past it.
Yeah, and use that page wisely, and you'll, we all learn that over time. But I love short stories. I think everybody should, if they're getting into comics, do really short paged comics. I think that helps.
Well, they're also really challenging because there's a lot that you have to try and convey. You learn how to not be long-winded. You learn how to, cut out a lot of the excess fat that isn't actually doing anything for your comic. And then you start to go, okay, well, I was able to tell this much of a story in 4 pages. So now I'm going to just bump it out a little bit more. And suddenly you've got a regular sized comic book.
Right. It's a good exercise for sure.
Also, Shae, you have to remember that when you are going around in a circle in your own head and you're using that as a frame of reference, say for emotion of a character, you can be repeating the same things over and over again without ever knowing you're repeating the same things over and over again. And while that can seem compelling to you because it is your own mind and your own emotions and you are feeding off of them in some way, it can be very boring to somebody who's saying, okay, we're going to talk about this, your ex yet again. You know what I mean?
You have to, don't get too far into your own weeds.
Yeah,
exactly. So I think it's good to maybe in private blow off steam, as Phil said, in the safe confines of a short story and just put it in the drawer. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not, but at least you vomited that stuff out.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, it's going to chase you forever, and it's going to end up in every story you tell. Yeah. And you're going to always implant a character that's Shae, I don't know, looking in the mirror and slitting her wrist with clown makeup on. With a black and white filter on.
I think I'll write that.
Next poem. It's happening.
But you get the point, though, what I'm saying.
Yes, I do. Yes. Well, and so that's actually something that. So I wrote this piece today, and I sent it to a good number of people. I didn't send it to everyone that I wanted to send it to. There's some people that I want to work through a little bit more before I let them see it. But I sent it to some people that I thought were going to at least give me initial impressions. And already I've gotten the feedback that, I was like, okay, well, I know that at least this is hitting a good emotional turn, but there's, certain parts that are clunky. There's certain parts that are hard to understand or get through. And so I've already got kind of like that first little bit, but I don't know about you guys, and this is something we'll get into next week when we're talking about editing. One of my favorite things to do is to take something that I feel was really emotionally charged, because normally when I read my own stuff again, after I've felt all that emotion and I've got it out on the page, I kind of like, I have a love hate for it. Cause I'm like, I like that I wrote it and that it's there. And I hate that it sounds so fucking depressing or sappy, or like, once again, it's something emotional. And so I start sending it to people that I've sent stuff like that before. And I wait for them to tell me, yeah, this is a lot like the 3 other ones you sent me, and be like, cool, so this one can get trashed. Like, or this is something like, I really liked this one piece that you had in there. That is a really cool piece. And like, okay, so that's something I should expand on. The rest of it is probably derivative of everything else that I write. and as a result, I try to kind of spread it around, because I don't want every story to be like I'm slashing my wrist, or every story to be like the world is coming to an end.
I think I wrote my very first full-length screenplay I wrote when I was 22, the one I sent you. that was my forum to vomit out my screamo emo, right? That's what that was, and I've never written anything like that ever again. And it was a good experience because it produced 120 pages. It's there, but anything after that never went near that ground ever again. And it was a good exercise because I have no interest in tapping my inner demons ever again. You know, they're there.
Love it. There's something to be said about writing something that's fun. You know, you can write characters that are fun, that are upbeat, that are positive, and you know, there is something to be said about writing that superhero story where, you know, you got Mr. Invincible versus Miss Invincible or whatever, you know, where the two immovable forces come together just to show their sparks, like Will said a while ago.
Well, Jerry brings up a good point here, Shae, and for the panel, I don't know if you agree, but once you can get those traumatic things out of the way, then we can have some fun, right?
Yeah.
Now you can allow yourself to have some fun with your characters. They don't have to be expressions of your trauma.
Yeah.
Right? As Jerry just said, now we can tell a superhero story where we can have some sparks flying.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so this is like the stuff I'm writing now is all like deep, dark horror, drama, depression bullshit. But
is Evanescence playing in the background?
No, I listen. Thank you very much. I listened to EDM while I did it because that's better, right?
Which groups you listen to?
I don't know. It was some 2020 mix that was 3 hours long. I just hit play and started typing.
Okay, fair enough.
But I do like to write not depressing shit. I do like to write like happier stuff. I lose interest in my own stories pretty quickly. So I don't ever end up writing anything like long enough to be a comic or to be an actual story. Everything that I write is like tiny little snippets because I'm like, I could be interesting for 10 pages.
Then just write 1-page comics.
Yeah.
Tell 1-page stories.
I like a thing that might help you with that. Shae, is when you're thinking about your story. You know, I think this, especially now that I'm doing comics and stuff, I kind of think of key moments that get me excited.
Yeah.
Like scenes or glimpses in the story where it's like, okay, this guy's doing this thing. I'm like, that's really cool. And then later on, he could do this thing. And then what happens in between that? And that's what you sit down to write.
Yeah.
So, and I think specifically for comics, that's almost what comics are all about. It's these iconic moments and how you get your reader to look at those awesome iconic moments that are going to stay in their head, and they're going to be like, oh, this is the coolest splash page or double page spread ever. And then, how those characters interact to get there. A lot of the times that's the writing I do away from the desk. That's what the writing I do while I'm driving or in the shower. And then when I actually sit down, it's all the in between that stuff. Yeah, the filler.
Yeah, like I think he's got a point there that the moments can kind of write the story around it. I think John Carpenter once said that the reason he wanted to make the original the 1982 thing was just to do the blood test scene.
Yeah,
if you guys know what I'm talking about. Like he read that script and said, "I'm making this movie to do this scene."
Yeah,
and I think you can build a story around one really cool moment like that scene.
It's the hook. It's the hook that sets in your brain and then pulls the rest of that story out of it.
And once again, that's the thesis. Okay, what would facilitate having to do this cool scene like the blood test? I don't want to spoil it for Shae because you've never seen it, I don't think.
Yes, I have.
Oh, you see? Okay, so...
Oh my God.
Who was it then? Who was in the room that hadn't seen it?
Dead and pissed. Holy shit. What?
Who was in the room that hadn't seen it? It was somebody in one of these panels. I can't remember who it was that hadn't seen it. But I guess it wasn't you. But
it was
okay, then good.
Definitely not me because that was one of my favorite parts of it. Like
right, and that sticks in your head when you remember that film, and you could build a whole movie on that, or write a whole script on that, and you could do that sometimes with it, especially with a comic, because comics are bread and butter plot is one thing linking to another, and visuals. So if you've got something iconic like that, like a petri dish and testing a bunch of guys to see whether or not their blood reacts to a hot needle, and a thing jumping out, you're like, okay, people will buy a book just to look at that scene and go, "That was
Right.
cool."
Yeah.
What do we put on either side of that?
It's
Well, and if
it's,
you go ahead,
it's
Luke.
like Stephen. Have you guys read On Writing? Stephen King's On Writing.
No,
There's this
sir.
one
No.
part where he talks about being an archaeologist with your story. You have that one part, like the scene with the blood test, that's sticking out of the ground, and then you get that part out, and then you follow the rest of the skeleton out until you get the whole story out.
Yeah.
So it's
Right, like you find a femur. You're like, what does it belong to? What is this animal? Is it a quadruped? Is it a biped? And then as you slowly excavate more, it takes form. Right.
So you have this scene that you have found, and then you excavate that scene, and you find out what the rest of that story is.
Well, so that kind of leads into Leg Kick's question. Do you do exercises in writing? Pick a subject, time, period, city, or person, and write a story on it. So before I kick it to you guys, I just picked up something that I thought was awesome. So there's this book called Write the Story, right?
Nice.
It literally is just a book of prompts. That's all it is. So like this one says, write the story picking up a hitchhiker include in your story a hospital visualization or visualizing, defer, mattress, interface, skyline, experiment, interpret, beaker, and sap. So it gives you a list of words to somehow include in there, and it gives you a topic, and it gives you 1 page and says ready, go.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really useful. My wife got me that same book about 2 years ago for my birthday, and man, like you'll sit there and be like, I remember I was doing one of them while I was at work one day, and I was just looking at it. I was like, oh, I can't even remember which one it was, but I literally spent 10-15 minutes just going over things in my head. I was like, how can I get everything in here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it's while you may not end up having something from that book that is going to turn into a big story, it's a really good exercise in trying to give yourself limitation. Because that was one thing that we were saying before, is a lot of the time the sheer amount of freedom that you have when you're a writer and you're sitting there and you have that blank page staring back at you, like literally anything in the world could go down on that. You could write absolutely anything. And that can be for me, that is the first step to writer's block every time, because I get inundated with thoughts and then I can't pick because there's no boundary, there's no parameter. And so having something like this where he says, this is what your subject is, these are the words that you have to get in there, ready, go. And it's like, all right, well now this is more like when I was in school and I was bullshitting 10-page papers, but doing so convincingly enough that my teacher was like, you have a really good grasp on this book. And I was like, never read it, didn't read a single page of it, but
skimmed it real well. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yep.
I read the abstract. I'm really good at putting together what happened.
Well, going back to what Phil said earlier about the exciting moments, a lot of times, those moments or that thesis, I guess, would hit me out of nowhere sometimes. And as I start mentally putting that together, and then when I go to sit down and I go to write, I don't have that so much of a writer's block, because I want to get to, I'm so pumped up about this idea that I have that I just want to get it out, just vomit it out on the page. And then I go back and I see, okay, well, this could use some work. I need some more characterization here, or I need a little more plot development here. But a lot of times I just blast it out.
That's very true.
If I could get back to the question about the exercises, writing exercises, I think if you're developing characters, I think writing them in short stories is a great exercise. But also, if you're trying to develop your script writing skills for comics, a great exercise that was kind of like I heard about through Matt Fraction was doing an interview and said this, is if you take like one of your favorite comics and read it and kind of reverse engineer it. So you look at a panel, you see what's going on, you read the dialogue, and basically write the script in your own script to that comic, and telling your imaginary artist what he would be drawing and the emotion he would want to convey. I think that is a good way to kind of break down comics into script form, so you'll be ready to actually work with an artist when the time comes. And I was doing that a few years ago. I started doing that with Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, just for fun and as an exercise to flesh out my script writing technique. So that's a good exercise.
There's an online repository of scripts as well.
Right. Yeah. That's good.
I can't remember what the hell the website. I have to search for it every time I go to look for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can basically compare the two.
Yeah. So you can see what professional scripts are like. You can look up your favorite author and go find their scripts. Like I went and looked up like some Alan Moore scripts, some Warren Ellis scripts, just to see the difference in what they put in for the artist, what they use to describe things, how they set up pages,
Absolutely.
Because I've never written for anybody but me so far. And,
Right.
So I've got my own like shorthand and like, how would I translate this so somebody else could actually understand it?
Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly. Oh, Will's
Well, no, I'm just saying that it's
finding
kind of funny that you guys bring that up. Is that when I was about 12, the reason I asked for this for Christmas is if you guys know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Dark Knight.
Dark Knight.
This one is signed, but what's kind of cool about this edition is that it actually includes the scripts.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so when you're a 12-year-old kid and you're wondering how these things get written, this was an invaluable template to have. That's what I used to figure out how Frank Miller formatted.
Very cool.
So, it was kind of cool. This is more of a nostalgia thing that I'm sharing with you guys, but that's something I bought. I demand this for Christmas just to get this.
Right.
So I could do what you guys were doing, look on the internet. You lucky bastards.
Well, that's actually what I kind of did with writing my first script, or the script for this book anyway, because I kind of played around with writing a comic script before while I was deployed. But like I would look at them and like this would probably be serviceable, but it's not an especially good script. It's not formatted well, and so I was trying to teach myself how to format a script, and I ended up picking up a special edition of Marv Wolfman's Man and Superman, a great book. And at the back of it, he had the entire script of his first issue of the story. And so that's literally how I taught myself how to write a comic script, because I would go and I'd have his script open and I'd look at the panel, and then I'd be like, okay, so this is what he means by this, that, and the other. Because I remember, like, I'm not an incredibly tech savvy person, so it would be like I'd look up on Google, be like, how do I write a comic script? Like, how do I format it? And like, I'd get a few classes, and like 9 times out of 10, it would be some pretentious guy trying to tell me what the difference between a protagonist and an antagonist was. And I was just like, I'm well beyond that. This isn't what I need. I just need to know how to like put this together in a way where if I hand it to an artist, he doesn't look at me like I'm an asshole.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did is I lucked out, and I didn't even know that this book came with it. I really liked the story, and I picked up the special edition because it looked really pretty, and I was flipping through it, and then sure enough in the back, it's like, here's my first draft of the original script, and I went, oh, thank goodness. But I
will cherish it always.
So like literally while I was writing the 0 issue for Elysian Fields, like it took me like 3 months to write that, because I literally
formatting
just back and forth, familiarizing myself with like, all right, what kind of shot do I need here? Do I want it like a camera angle point of view over a camera over like the character's shoulder? Do I want a wide shot? Do I want a bird's eye view?
Right.
And I was like getting a hold of all that. I know that the topic is characters and what have you, but like this was it was honestly like the most useful thing. And I wish that I had known about the script databases, because now I feel like a complete idiot because I could have just found that online. But
Gabe has another question. Do you find it easier to write a story around one character, or having several characters that can play off of each other?
I think if you do, sorry, go Luke. Sorry.
I was just going to say I find it easier to have multiple characters. That way, you have light and dark. You have some opposites to play off of. You have interaction. Because if it's just a single character, then you end up being just too much inside that one character's head. They become de facto narrator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I also think it depends on the format of the story you're telling. Like, I'll give you an example, an amazing example about a story being built around one character, which is Memento.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know if you guys have actually read the short story by Jonathan Nolan.
No.
The short story it's only about 10 pages, but it's
right.
awesome, which is he actually puts you in the mindset of somebody who actually has this disorder, better than the movie, where it's about what is his name in the film? The Guy Pearce character, I don't remember his name, but
it's been way too long since I've seen that.
The short story talks about him escaping from the hospital, but he keeps forgetting that he has the condition to go to the door, and then he keeps taking these baby steps trying to get to the door of his room so he can get out. And the whole story is him getting from his bed to the hallway and trying to remember that he's in the hospital, why he's in the hospital, and then the end of the story is getting into the hallway. But it's fascinating. Like he keeps forgetting why he's in the hospital, but the story is written from that point of view.
Right.
I'm like, wait a minute, like it keeps resetting within the story, right?
Yeah.
There are definitely ways to handle that single character dynamic. It is a very difficult thing to do, and I feel like there are some writers that are really great. Like I found that I've seen writers that are really great at writing just one single character or a very small cast of characters, or they can only write like big casts of characters. I think in the mainstream, I think a good example of that would be like Tom King. His Batman run, they gave him way too many characters, and you can just tell that he didn't have a good time doing it. But then you look at something like his Vision run, or even his Superman Up in the Sky book. And since he only has to focus on like one character, he does a really good job of handling that. But like on the other hand, you have other writers who, I've read some other people try and write just one character, and it does come off as very limited, because if you have just one character, you don't have a lot to play off of.
Well, for me, I think starting out with a character, I think writing them and just them for a little bit lets you know who they are as a writer. So later on, you could put them in circumstances with other characters.
Yeah.
For the Lost Pages, and specifically my character, the Silhouette, I've been writing short stories with that character for years, and I think I know him more now, and I can throw him in stories with other characters. So as starting out, if you just come up with a character, that might be a good way to get to know them better.
And I would absolutely agree. One of the most useful tools that I ever learned in any sort of writing class that I ever took was the exercise of, go through your character's room.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned it earlier, like what's in their closet, what's in their bed, what did they write? Do they have a diary? Did they write in their diary this evening? Mm-hmm. If so, what did they write in that diary?
Yeah.
So there's a movie that I saw recently that kind of did a really good job of from one person's perspective for a good chunk of it, and then it finally kind of let in another person. And it's called The Fair. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it.
No, I have not.
So it's kind of a B horror movie type, but it was really, really good. Basically what it is you have a guy who is a cab driver, and I won't give a bunch away, but he's a cab driver, and he has to go pick up a woman out in the middle of nowhere. And even though she's there, you don't really get to know a lot about her. Right. So she's sitting in the back. They have a little bit of banter. It goes so. And then they hit a part where he's driving, where a storm kicks up, and all of a sudden she's gone. And he's in his cab without his fare, and he has to flip around and go back, and he flips around and goes back, and everything resets. And it keeps happening over and over again.
Very Twilight Zone-y.
So even though you have her as a character, she doesn't get developed until way later in the film. And it's really just she's there so he has somebody to talk to, so you get to know more about him, because things keep happening in almost the exact same way, but not quite. Like the same stuff will come on the radio. He'll say almost the same thing to her. She'll have a very similar response as she had before, but because his question changed, her response changed slightly.
Right.
And you start piecing this shit together, and you start to kind of get a lot into his mind, and then they have a big reveal, and now they're both huge characters that you follow, and you get to know both of their stories, and they play off of each other a lot, and then it becomes like, okay, cool, this is epic. Like it was a really, really good film. If you guys haven't seen it, highly recommended.
What was it called?
The Fair.
The Fair.
FARE, like taxi fare.
Like a cab fare.
Mhm.
I'm putting it down.
It was a very interesting film, but the thing that I liked about it is even though there were two people there, you still really weren't getting a lot from her for a while, and so it still felt like it was one character and then something he could talk to that was believable that he would be talking to it,
Right.
as opposed to like talking to the wall.
That sounds awesome. I'm gonna have to look up. Do you know what year that came out?
2018, it says.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
2018. Okay,
newer.
it's recent. Okay, awesome.
It's in black and white, right?
Yes and no.
Well, so the
Watch the
screenshots I'm seeing, I'm guessing.
There's shit gets weird. That's all I'm gonna say.
I have a question going back to
Yeah.
not the techniques, the practice, warm-ups. What do you guys think of like the one sentence? Remember that thing that was going around, the one sentence horror stories? Did you guys ever do those?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I always thought those were
I forgot
so
about those.
fun. Yeah, that's like haiku. And you know, if you're writing one, you can't just like tack an and on there and then throw an extra sentence on there. It's got to flow, you know. It's got to actually tell a story in a single flowing sentence that makes sense. And I always thought that was a really good exercise. That's the word I was looking for. It's a really good exercise in writing. How do you guys feel about those?
Well, I spent like 45 minutes reading like a database of those. They had like a whole web page of just like the one sentence horror stories, and people are talented. Some of those people are talented because it's hard to do that. That's not something that's easy to do.
And
some of those are chilling too.
Some they did very, very well. Others were absolute garbage.
You're gonna have that. Especially like an internet
you gotta have the balance.
Yeah, brevity is very hard to do.
It is.
Especially when there's vanity involved, right? Because it's your head. Yeah. So it's that's kind of something I've got the luxury of working with Dan with, is that he's telling me what to do and what he wants. Mm-hmm. So I get the hired gun benefit of working for him, because he tells me what he needs and I just go and do it. But it's not me sitting there and going, what to come up with? No, I've got a list of things I have to do for Dan.
Yeah.
And that just makes it easier for me.
Well, it kind of takes some of the pressure off of you.
Right. He says, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, of course I can.
You just do the mechanic shit. Let him come up with the big ideas. You just make that shit work, right?
Well, I mean, we've both got the big ideas, but the good thing is that what Phil said is that I'm working for one of the greatest sequencers in comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to write visuals for Dan, right?
No,
I have to write plot and dialogue for Dan, and that takes a big load off your head.
Yes, it does.
You know, when you've got Dan Frega doing the art, and he's going to do something. Because you know what he is? He's like Michael Bay, right? Michael Bay, when he does his movies, he tells writers.
I dare say he's better at framing than Michael Bay is.
Well, no, I'm saying that he doesn't say write the action sequences, it's write action. I'll take care of the rest.
Right.
Right? Like a writer doesn't have to write an action sequence for Michael Bay. He just says, just write action there, and it'll be a 20-minute, crazy piece of film.
Right.
Explosion porn. Yes.
Exactly. So I count myself very lucky that I don't have that added part of my brain that has to be used during all this.
Well, that's something. Go ahead, Shae. I'm sorry.
No. You go.
That's something that we haven't really talked about in comics because a lot of it's visual. You know, the artist takes care of a lot of the characterization. You know, if you have to trust them, though. You have to let them have a little bit of leadway so that they can do that for you, or you'll be trying to you'll write 100 pages for a 24-page comic.
Yeah, no, that's no good. You know, get to the point. You know.
Yeah.
So, I recently read. So I've got, because over the past week I've gotten probably 4 or 5 different Comicsgate books that have fulfilled and hit my doorstep. So I've just been reading great comics, and it's been awesome. And one that I read that was kind of a sleeper hit for me. Like, I did not expect that it was going to be. No, I don't have Magic Cop yet. I gotta add that one. I did back Lost Pages, but I didn't get Magic Cop yet.
Which one was it, Shae?
You.
Boo,
Okay.
boo. I know. You know what? This is my show. I'll just mute all of you.
Yeah.
I gotta listen to this.
Which book was it, Shae?
It was Tales from the Classroom
Oh yeah.
by Rob Muerto. I did not expect it to be as good as it was, but after I read it, I was like, you know, you want to talk about characterization. He did a phenomenal job in making a high school full of monsters.
Yeah.
Like his main character being a zombie and being somebody who used to be super popular and now is kind of bottom of the barrel, and is trying to figure out how to like fit in with, you know, werewolves and it's like werewolves and vampires, and there's like you name it, it's there. It was really interesting because it's like watching a teen, you know, movie drama, but everybody is monsters, and the emotion and the pacing of the dialogue, that's something that I find usually is what kind of throws me, is when people try to do dialogue and it's like they forget how people actually speak. And so they write dialogue and they're like, well, hello there, fine sir. And you're like, nobody is saying this. Why would you do that? That's
Well,
like, hey,
always
what's
read
up?
out loud.
Yeah. And Rob did such a good job. And he was like, I'm happy that you liked it. I meant it more for like a younger audience, but I'm glad to hear that like adults can like it too. And it hit me a lot like Monsters, Inc. Where things are just kind of, it might be geared towards the younger audience, but there's plenty in it for adults to read and be like, I remember that kind of shit.
And
that's absolutely it.
That's something that when we were talking about themes, that's actually something that I brought up, was that I feel that it's something that's been missing from this medium for a while. Is that, you know, initially these stories were catered towards a younger audience, but then you had these people like, you know, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and everything, that they had these great stories that could be appreciated by everybody, right? And that's what made the comic industry golden in the first place. And so it's really cool to see books that are kind of going back to that. You know, one of the books that I backed that I'm really excited to get my hands on when it comes out is Dragon Guard by Kevin Sharp. And Kevin's whole thing in the campaign is that anybody can read the book. You could give that book to like a 10-year-old and they'll be able to read, like they'll be able to read it and appreciate it, because it's essentially just like He-Man, He-Man or Thundercats knockoff.
Thundercats, yeah. It's like a mix of both of them, it seems like.
Yeah, no, and it looks great, and I think that that's a really good thing that's coming back into the forefront, is writing a story that can be appreciated by everyone, because it forces a writer to get more creative. Because
Thundercats knockoffs, Battle Cats.
Yeah,
I'm a huge Thundercats fan, and so I saw this in previews. I was like, "Ooh, must check out." It's pretty good though. Mad K puts out some good stuff. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, you did.
Yes, he did.
I got Rob's book this week as well. I read it with my daughter, and every character had a different voice. You know, Wolfman had that that Cali kind of surfer dude voice, and then Rob had that just analytical. He was very analytical and kind of like just studied everyone around him. So I did different voices for her, you know, as I read it, and it's really nice to be able to get a book and do that with, because it was the characterization in it was so well rounded.
Yeah, and the thing that I love in comics, opposed to novels, is with different characters' voices, you could actually visually represent that with the different balloons that you give the characters. That's something I love doing when I letter.
The text.
Yeah, for the text or even the speech bubbles, like for my character Bone Daddy-O in Magic Cop, his balloons are different than everybody else's. He's kind of got like a Jamaican accent I wrote in there. And visually it looks different. So in the reader's head, they're going to read it differently than they would, you know, anyone else in the book.
Like McFarlane used to do with Spawn. I don't know if he still does it, but...
Well, you do the dribbly, the drippy.
Well, and then like
balloons.
Yep.
Well, and that's actually something that Rob did when he had when his main character is Rob Muerto. So when Rob the zombie was talking, everything looked kind of like torn scraps of paper. And then when his buddy Eddie was talking, which is the wolf, it was like a lined piece of paper, and everything was like really, you know, systematic and all that. But he does that, and when you have the vampires talking versus clay monster talking versus, you know, other werewolves talking, like all of their speech bubbles were different dependent on kind of like their race and how their race would typically talk. And it made it really kind of like it changes something in your head when it's done right, to where you just instantly, this is a different voice, and you don't read them all with that same kind of bland haze. Everything becomes its own thing.
Right.
It was really, really well done. I was very much impressed.
Deepens the characterization.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It gives you more buy-in too, because it's a visual representation of how different your characters are from other things.
Well, it's involving you as a reader. You know, it's making your brain connect these things, and you feel more drawn into the story that way. You know, you're more involved.
Absolutely. So I'm actually out of questions because I've just got all excited about all of these things now, and I can't.
Well, I mean, now we're on the subject of dialogue. I'd say that writing dialogue is it depends what you're writing it for. If you're writing comics, you can get away with very accentuated dialogue because everything in a comic is accentuated, because it's you don't have the advantage of space like in a movie where, you know, you can do that staccato talking. You know, so it can be a little on the nose, right? But I think it depends on what the style is, right? Are you trying to do soliloquy dialogue? Or are you trying to do realistic dialogue? Are you trying to do some kind of caricature dialogue? I mean, because some people will say it's like, for example, Quentin Tarantino, if you look at it a certain way, it's not good dialogue, but it depends on what style you're looking at it in. It's a soliloquy dialogue. It's meant to kind of link together like a dance, right? People don't talk like that, right? They don't talk in perfectly harmonious speech patterns that riff off of each other, right? They go on to run off sentences. They go on to tangents. They speak in, you know, half syllables, right? Like they don't talk like that. But it depends on what the style is. And for Quentin's style, soliloquy dialogue is great because that's his trademark, and it kind of lends itself to the movie because the movie flows through his dialogue. It doesn't advance. It flows through his dialogue. It's like a river. Yeah. Right. It's not. It gives you plot points, but the movie is flowing in it. Right. You could say his movie is dialogue. It's not even the plot really.
I dare say dialogue is probably Quentin's favorite thing to write.
But you understand what the distinction I'm making, right, Luke?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because people don't talk like his characters in real life.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. Some people try.
Right.
I mean, some people try to talk like Joss Whedon writes as well, and it gets real annoying real quick.
Yeah, but
they're looked at sideways for it. Like it's not accepted. It's you being a douchebag.
There's a difference between glib chatter and soliloquy. Right, I'd say Joss Whedon is on the glib chatter side. Would you agree? Like,
I would.
Define glib chatter. Now
glib chatter is like essentially every bit of Kevin Smith's movies. It's a bunch of nerds and gammas, talking like talking like people actually care what they have to say, and they would ever have that diction in real life, right? You know what? Aaron Sorkin, more glib chatter. Like The Social Network is just glib chatter all the way through. It's as though Jesse Eisenberg is narrating your life.
Oh
God,
Jesus!
You just nightmare.
Where you just can't stand it. It's like, okay, it sounds condescending. It sounds like a guy talking a mile a minute, and he's so intelligent. It just gets grating on the nerves.
Oh, is that the infamous mansplaining that I have heard so very much about?
Mansplaining is actually, man being a man.
Look, man,
being a real man.
Somebody being upset that somebody had something to say.
This is wannabe mansplaining from a bunch of wannabe men. That's the glib chatter.
All right. All right. Sure. Wow.
Okay, here, going back to characterization. Yeah. If you listen to some of the dialogue, now I love Buffy for the stories that they told back then and the dialogue back then. The problem is that it was so successful, everybody wanted to emulate that shit. And the problem with that type of dialogue is that everybody, when they're a quippy smartass, sounds exactly the same.
Exactly.
This is the problem we have in a lot of the Marvel Universe movies. Everybody is a quippy smartass. Everybody got a snappy comeback for everything.
Yeah, and it gets annoying and grating after a while.
You lose the peaks and valleys. It all gets smoothed out because everything's the same.
Well, and I honestly think that especially when you bringing up the MCU and what have you, it's really a shame because that's become their staple, that's become their brand. But like my favorite Thor movie is the first Thor film. I thought Kenneth Branagh did a great job with that screenplay. I felt
the Destroyer was great.
Well, like everything about that movie was fantastic. Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston are, with the exception of Infinity War, that is when Chris Hemsworth is at his best at Thor, and I would argue it with anyone. Like the charm he brings to the role, the scene where he
playing that part too.
Like the scene where he explains the 9 realms. Say what you want about Natalie Portman, and what have you, but like the scene where Thor is explaining all the different 9 realms. It's this simple exposition piece, but the way that Hemsworth plays it off and the way that it's written by Branagh, it feels romantic and you're invested. But you wouldn't have that in a current MCU film. Like the people that did stuff like that are on the way out. The Russo brothers with Captain America: Winter Soldier, another movie with fantastic dialogue where like you had Black Widow was kind of a quippy smartass, but like that was kind of what they had been doing with Natasha since her introduction into the MCU. But like Cap felt genuine.
I still love the first Captain America movie.
It's a great film. I think that all 3 Captain America movies are solid. Civil War kind of got a little bit bloated, but like, I mean, that's what's going to happen when you essentially.
Civil War is still a good espionage flick, despite.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, and like you go into things like Endgame and Infinity War, and you still, the Russos cared, and so there's solid dialogue there. Yeah, it's a bit on the quippier side because it's an Avengers film, and so you have what people are expecting from that, but you still get things like Thor's conversation with Rocket Raccoon in Infinity War is like I would say that is the only performance that has rivaled that 9 realms speech was Thor going off on the bit about him being like thousands of years old and all the people that have tried to kill him, and he's like fate's brought him to this moment to kill Thanos, and it's just like this is really good writing, and unfortunately we are no longer seeing that kind of talent in the MCU. Everyone's just kind of following a formula.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of the MCU, I have a question for you guys, and it's going to inform a further question. Do you think that Deadpool is a comedy or a satire?
It can't be both.
I'm just curious, like, well, depending on which one it is whether or not I think it's a good movie. You know, I'm just curious about what your guys' thoughts are.
I would say it's a satire of superhero movies.
Yeah,
I would say the first one is definitely a satire because, like, that's it actively does it. The entire movie in the first Deadpool is all about making fun of the things that make superhero movies.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would say Deadpool 2 is a comedy.
Deadpool 2 is the search for more money.
Yeah, essentially. I honestly love Deadpool 2 for and I'm a huge Colossus fan. So seeing Colossus fight the Juggernaut was all I needed for me to be
cool.
all down for Deadpool 2. But I would definitely say the first movie was a satire because
I'm glad they redeemed the Juggernaut.
Yeah. Oh man.
I love Vinnie Jones, but I'm the Juggernaut, bitch.
Yeah, no.
You're not.
You're not. He's a big dude, and
he's huge.
That
movie was terrible, though. That movie was terrible.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
No, let's not.
Okay, so then let's change the topic to something that I don't think that we've actually discussed yet. So, talking about characterizations and kind of character building and all of that. What do you think is your greatest challenge when trying to create a believable, relatable character? Like, what is the hardest part of that for you?
All right. For me, I'll take this one. In comics and in superhero comics, I think the hardest thing is, in the sense of making them relatable to humans, is giving them a weakness and giving them a fear, which you guys spoke about last week, and stuff they're worried about. Because especially on certain levels of characters, you have these people that could just destroy any human, right? So giving them unique worries and limitations is, I think, is a pretty difficult thing. It's something that needs to be thought through a lot when making a new character.
Like character flaws, like in D&D. You know, take a character flaw, you get an extra perk. Yeah.
Right, because everybody wants their character to be the best and not get wrecked by anyone.
Flawless, right? Man, force field, yeah.
But that's you can't be overpowered, and you going back to that Berserk thing. You need to be able to sympathize and be like, you have the reader believe that this character can die.
Nobody can relate to a purely invincible character.
Yeah, because the best characters are characters that have struggles and people they love that you can relate to.
Right. That goes right back to all of the Superman movies that they had, and I can't remember which one it was. I just know that I hated it.
Richard Pryor was in it.
I don't pay attention to celebrities or anything, but the thing that was probably one of the most frustrating for me was there was a scene in this one where he came in a room and was within 50 feet of Superman with this teeny tiny little block of kryptonite, and Superman's writhing on the floor, unable to move. Right. End of the world, can't do anything. At the end of the movie, not only does he lift an entire island.
Superman Returns. Oh,
is that it?
Yeah.
An entire island made of kryptonite.
He gets shanked, and then he can fly all the way up there.
If you pay attention, this motherfucker has his hand directly on a CG'd kryptonite underneath his hand. So they could get a cool green glow through his fingers.
Not just that, there's shards of kryptonite growing towards him.
Like he couldn't be within 50 fucking feet of a dime-sized piece.
You know why I can explain why he can do that. Because the script says so.
Yeah.
Shit.
The script is not the only problem with that movie.
No, there's a lot wrong with that movie.
That movie had a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and I do think that it was a shame and I'm glad that Routh actually got a chance to play Superman again because he did a fantastic job in the Crisis crossover.
He was the least problem with that movie.
Yeah.
Why did you hire Kevin Spacey and then make him act like Gene Hackman?
Well, that was the whole thing, was that the entirety of Superman Returns is just nostalgia from the Christopher Reeve movie. That's like literally they reuse like 3/4 of the dialogue from that movie. Like every single line between Lois Lane and Superman in that film is recycled from the original film. Like they have like the I hope this doesn't put you off of flying, still statistically the safest way to travel. You know, they have the will we see you around? Literally every single line between most of these characters in that film was just let's figure out a way to take the script written by Mario Puzo and Richard Donner and redo it. Except nowhere near the level of charm or heart.
The thing is like, and this is, I can say this because Sai isn't here, because if Sai was here, she'd put me backstage and I would no longer be able to speak. The issue that I have with Superman and the way that he's normally handled is the only weakness, like the only reason that he isn't laser shooting every last motherfucker, flying all around, dropping people off of cliffs, or like whatever the hell he needs to do in order to stop something, is because essentially he's just too much of a pussy to do it, because he's like, well, I don't want to kill. I don't want to.
So that's a misconception with Superman. Superman's reason why he doesn't go to these extremes is because he's seen the best of humanity, and he knows what we can accomplish if we reach that potential. That's the whole point. Is that if
you have someone who is obviously veered,
he's never going to give up. He's like,
right.
Even with
but that's what I'm saying. That being your weakness, that you are so fucking naive that you think that literally every person on the planet is going to eventually choose the right path.
That's the whole point of DC Comics.
And
it's a modern mythology.
I disagree, because every other character I don't have a problem with. Superman specifically, because even Supergirl understands some people are just fucking shit. Superman, it's like he just can't get it through his damn head.
It's a whole thing of Superman is a representation of the idea of that there is hope for every single person. And I like that's something that, you know, especially with the way things are in like the current situations of today and what have you, a lot of people have problems identifying with. It's something that people see as antiquated. And so that's why the best Superman stories are ones where you have that conflict, where the things that he is supposed to represent as a character are called into question as, are they still relevant? Things like Kingdom Come, you know, the whole point, the whole reason why Superman goes into retirement in Kingdom Come was because the Joker kills everyone on Daily Planet, and then another hero, Magog, kills him, and it becomes this whole thing of, is Superman the hero we need in this modern time? And you have
the point I'm getting at is in order for me to really be able to buy into and feel like a character isn't incredibly one-dimensional, I need you to give him something other than being that naive. Like that can't be the only weakness. Like when you look at Batman is fucking troubled as shit. Like he's got all kinds of fucked up bullshit going on.
Yeah, well, Batman is essentially a totalitarian regime. Like he runs a police state out of
here's the difference, right? Is he also, like, whenever he's sitting there and he has the entire Justice League together, Batman is creating a failsafe for every single member to include himself. This is what you need to do to take me down and to destroy me should I ever go rogue.
And Superman has done the same by giving Batman kryptonite.
Yeah, I get it. I feel like
the bottom line is Superman sucks. You know?
I was about to say, I'll be 100 with you. I find Superman real fucking boring.
I used to really hate Superman. I grew up a huge Marvel fanboy, I grew up with things like X-Men the
The
animated.
appropriate
series.
term is Marvel Zombie. Get it right.
But whatever. What the point is that I was into into mostly Marvel properties, and there are a few things like I grew up with Batman the animated series, and so like those are things that I paid attention to. But Superman was always this character that I really didn't like for the same reasons that you pointed out, Shae.
Yeah.
But then I had a buddy at one point lend me a few books. And I think the book that got me to fall in love with Superman truly was All-Star Superman. And if you're looking for like a Superman book that's really just going to
fantastic.
It's just going to completely redefine how you see the character. It's All-Star Superman. Because like it's the perfect culmination of everything pure about the character, and it kind of happens in this time period where it's kind of ambiguous. It kind of feels like it could be the golden age, it's this weird kind of culmination of like the 40s, 60s, and 70s. But like it's a pure Superman story, and the whole thing with the character is that if you want to make an interesting version of the character, and you got to kind of do what they did with Captain America Winter Soldier, where the struggle shouldn't be a physical one, it should be about a struggle of ideals, where the current world has a different viewpoint and they want him to get with the program and he's not willing to, because at the end of the day it doesn't matter. Like if you put him against something physical, he's going to win. He's Superman. He's going to punch through that thing because he's got plot armor.
Sometimes he's going to win. How many times does he spend 50 pages getting his ass handed to him before he finally decides that he's going to do something?
That's all plot armor.
I get, but here's the thing is
him holding back.
I understand. Okay, so there is a difference between somebody holding back and essentially watching a character get abused repeatedly and unnecessarily, and that's where I end up having the problem. That
comes into poor writing, though.
So here's the question:
That's what I'm getting at.
Does he save Lois, or does he save the busload of children that's fixing to go off the bridge?
He's going to save both because he's Superman.
Well, that's his burden. He has to choose.
Right. Okay. But if he saves both, then he is a character that can do no wrong. That isn't having a burden. That's you eventually being able to do both of them. So there was no real conflict. Having to choose between a busload of children and the woman he loves, that's an actual conflict. And making him make that choice and not giving him an out. And having it
there are books that have done similar things like that.
I know.
Like if you're looking for a book that has that kind of a take of things, read Superman Earth 1. The second
I'm just saying that when it comes to writing Superman, people are much more happy to have him be able to do absolutely everything.
No, and that's something that I'd agree with. I think that people are lazy when they write him.
Yes.
And
I'm not saying that. I'm sure he could be written very well, and I'm sure that I could find something that made me go, you know what? Okay, I can see why some people like Superman. But the vast majority of the stuff that I've seen, he's always OP. He always wins everything.
And that's what I'm saying is that
that's poor writing.
I would agree with you that Superman is probably one of the worst handled characters of the past 20, 30 years. You will have an occasional creative team that'll come on and do dynamite with Superman. Peter J. Tomasi and Jorge Jimenez did a phenomenal job, and they gave Superman the struggle of being and so raising his son is a difficult thing for him. He has to set the right he's trying to teach his son how to be responsible with his powers, and he falls for it sometimes. I had a great time with that book. I like it a lot more now that I'm a dad.
Hey, have you guys ever read Superman's Secret Identity? That is like the one Superman book that I have ever enjoyed. It's a four issue miniseries, 48 page each. Kurt Busiek, illustrated by Stuart Immonen, 2004. Basically, it's Superman in our real world. This kid named Clark Kent gets made fun of because he's named Clark Kent.
I know what you're talking about. That was done by guy who did Chronicle, right?
No, you're thinking of American Alien, which was a great book.
Yeah, that was.
That was the only Superman story I've probably ever read. That was good.
That was a really good one. I think that
he bites Lobo's finger off in it.
Marv Wolfman's Man and Superman was a really good book. It's all about Clark Kent coming to Metropolis and him struggling with the concept of whether he even wants to be Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really good book, and it's like him trying to get a job as a reporter, and he's living in a shitty apartment that he found online in Metropolis, and like his super's a dick, everything. Everything about it was just a really good book, and Marv Wolfman even said that he thinks it's his best Superman story he's ever written. So if you're looking for something to check out, it's a one-off thing that it's like a long super issue kind of deal, but it's a great book, and it's how I feel Superman should be treated.
So I gotta ask, since we've been talking about characterization, and one of my biggest issues is how Superman tends to be handled, and so I've just never seen the appeal of him. You know, another one that I thought was really poorly handled, up until I really liked him in the New 52, and I've talked about this before, but Aquaman.
Aquaman got the best. New 52 had a lot of mistakes. Aquaman was like one of those characters that came out golden.
So the thing that I liked about what they did with Aquaman is prior to, he was always kind of like a less edgy Deadpool. He was always kind of just the comedic relief, and he was going to show up, and if he's going to sonar call some fucking fish, and things were going to happen.
Luke is about to probably go off about like the 80s and 90s run where he had like a hook and was the underwater barbarian.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing that, and I was like, "Huh, really? No, he still doesn't look tough. Sorry, it's still Aquaman."
So the thing that I liked when they did New 52 is in New 52 they didn't try to erase that all of that was the past, because normally when they do a relaunch, every character gets to start completely over. We get to pretend that none of the sins from before ever happened. With Aquaman, they kept them all. And they kept them all in a way that, like, dude's getting hazed when he goes to buy dog food. Like, he shows up to pick up a bag of dog food, and they're like, "Oh, what's the fish saying?" And he's like, "Har har," really funny. Right?
Yeah, everybody loved that. I think it was Jeff Johns wrote that.
Yes.
To Aquaman.
It was
everyone loved it.
It was so good because it showed him as a real man. It showed him flawed, and the interaction that he had with Mira was exactly what relationships are like. Like, he's a little jaded, a little pissed off, kind of like Will over here, just kind of like fuck everything.
Yep.
And then she came around and was like, "Okay, but you're not this big of an asshole, so go and do the right thing that you know is the right thing." And he's like, "Fuck, fine."
And she didn't beat him. She didn't beat him like he was Johnny Depp or something, you know.
I also think
that's only Mara in this reality, buddy.
Oh, that's a hell of a drug, don't you know?
Yeah.
But
that's real life.
I will also have to give kudos that Geoff Johns also did a phenomenal job of giving Orm a makeover. Or like everything about that Aquaman book was fantastic. I like it, like the dynamic between Orm and
write anything. That man.
Yeah, why do you say Joff and George when you say Jorge?
I do. I don't notice it. Like, I don't mean to. It's not.
Just wondering.
Oh, funny. Okay, sorry, I totally derailed this. By the way, for those of you who don't know, my co-host Cyborg is probably one of the biggest Superman fans ever. And once Cy gets back and starts watching all these past ones and gets to this one, I am so fucked. So if you don't see me for a while after Cy gets back, I'm sorry. Start looking for me in deserts with shovels, okay?
Well, I agree. Peter Smetty in the chat was saying that Alan Moore's story, The Man Who Has Everything,
It's a phenomenal book as well.
yeah, it's a good book, and they also did it really well in Justice League, the animated series.
Yes,
it's a great episode.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm willing. I'm gonna have to be willing because after this, I'm about to get slammed with fucking.
I can shoot you a list of books to check out.
I'm good. I'm gonna look. I think that I might get in more trouble if I let you be the one that turns me back onto Superman instead of Cyborg. So I'm just gonna wait.
How hot do you want that water?
I'm trying to cool it down. I'm sorry, Sai. When you watch this, I apologize. It's just because you weren't here to defend him. Okay.
What other characters? I mean, this could be a topic for another discussion at some point. But aside from Superman, because we've established that he can be a problem character, what other characters would be difficult to write? Would Dr. Manhattan be a difficult character to write outside of Watchmen because of the same reasons? Now, personally, I think Watchmen needs to be left the fuck alone. Okay, it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It was 12 issues. It was good for when it came out. It's good. Leave it the hell alone. Stop trying to we're gonna tell.
But
this
money,
story.
Luke.
Fuck money. Leave it the fuck alone. I don't care. Leave it the fuck alone.
But Luke,
leave it the fuck alone.
But Luke, Watchmen is an example.
Rights back. Leave it the fuck alone. What?
Watchmen's an example of what I was talking about earlier about a thesis, right? Each one of those characters is a term in a thesis of Alan Moore's world, right? So Dr. Manhattan's easy to write within the thesis of Alan Moore's world of nuclear annihilation between the Soviet Union and the United States. Because he fits perfectly in that thesis, right? But if you were to take him out, he would. I mean, it would be like a Deus Ex Machina. You know what I mean? On every single story you write with him, it's sort of like the dilemma of Superman.
Deus Ex Machina.
Huh?
Yeah. He's a living Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, but he works within the confines of that story and that thesis. So that's kind of a hard one to do because he was created to be where he was in that plot.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, he's a key that fits perfectly in there.
Exactly. Okay, so you can't do Dr. Manhattan either. What other difficult characters are there? Again, this could be a topic for another video. I was just came to me because of what we were talking about.
I mean, I think there's two distinctions to be made. Is that when you're talking about characters we all know, like for example Wolverine, the best Wolverine stories have been told.
Yeah.
Right. Weapon X being one of them. Old Man Logan being another one. Right. I mean, what can you do with these characters that hasn't been shot out, so to speak?
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult to do. And like for example, if you notice with Superman, when they make a movie, they keep going back to General Zod, because that's the problem. He doesn't have a villain.
And I don't want to spark up the damn Superman conversation.
I'm just saying that's an example. You know what I mean?
Let me just. Oh God, shit! Here we go.
We're not allowed to
Here we
anymore.
go.
I agree with Shae, by the way, the whole time.
Yeah, same.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
I agree with
I kind of feel like sometimes Superman, if you don't have somebody that is on his power level, duking it out with him, it gets to be a boring story. And if you do have somebody on his power level, it basically turns into destruction porn. You might as well have it set, out in, an abandoned universe
Area
somewhere.
51.
Yeah, or the same way, the Dragon Ball Z characters, they always conveniently are out in this rocky desert area where they can throw each other through mountains.
He's done compelling here. Yeah, that's pretty much the only time I think he's compelling because he's like a sellout.
No.
And you're kind of commenting on him there. That's where really I think he's interesting is in this book.
I like that.
Right.
But it goes back to giving your characters weaknesses and flaws and struggles. It's difficult to do that on godly levels.
And I think I'm sorry, Phil. I think what Frank did, what I found fascinating what he did with the character is use him as a stand-in for essentially the corrupt American empire. You know what I mean? Yeah. And selling out to it. That's interesting. Instead of just saying, hey, I'm Superman, I can blow up intercontinental ballistic missiles, it's more of what he stands for and kind of inverting it in The Dark Knight Returns. I thought that was cool, personally. I'm a big Frank Miller guy, so.
No.
In the chat here, Preston.
Really?
Yeah, I love Frank.
Acevedo says Red Sun is a really great Superman story.
Yep.
I've actually never read
but I've never read the Red Sun, but I hear it's good.
It's a good nature versus
good. They just
nurture.
came out with an
I
animated
wasn't
feature.
a huge fan. I felt that from me when I was reading it, there was some major issues with they would try and show Superman as like the classic version of Superman, but then he'd also be with Stalin Russia. And so these two things don't mix. And there was never a good point I felt in the book where they justified that being the case. And I didn't feel like that was organic whatsoever. And they did actually do an animated film of Red Sun. And I've been giving DC's animated features a hard time for a while now because I haven't been a fan of what they've been doing lately. But Red Sun actually took a story that I had very little care for whatsoever and turned it into a narrative about corrupt power, about the power of absolute power corrupting even those with the purest of intentions.
Yeah.
Because it becomes this whole story of him trying to not be Stalin and becoming the very thing that he's trying not to be by the end of the film. And it's very good. But you don't have, like, in the original book, that's not there. And I just, it didn't do it for me.
Somebody said something way beginning of the stream in the chat that they said that their favorite characters or villains are people they love to hate, and I would say to me that's incorrect. I think it's the one that you can actually understand why they're the villain. You know what I mean? And it's
Those
funny
are the most compelling.
Yeah, but you said that the purest of intentions. Usually, the greatest villains of history are the ones with the purest intentions.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is that he has they essentially make him so he starts off as kind of a propaganda tool, and then he kind of gets unveiled that he's being used as this, and Stalin's doing stuff behind his back, and so he is trying to live up to the Marxist ideal and be this person that doesn't do the things that Stalin did and becomes a monster of a different kind, equally terrifying. And I thought that was really good, the way that they handled it in the film, but that's not what's done in the book.
Yeah. Well, Superman sucks.
Still, you are not going to have a friend when Sai gets back. Sai's going to find you. Oh, no. So going on to what Will was saying, something that I actually disagree with. I think that we go too far in trying to make every character someone that we can relate to personally. And I think that a lot of the time when we have villains, we spend too much time trying to show that they're human too and that they go through stuff too. And I can understand why maybe, the Joker wants to level a city block or something crazy like that. And it's sometimes it can be done well. Sometimes it can be done.
That's not what I mean, though, Shae.
Okay. So what do you mean?
I agree with
saying...
you. Not that giving him a puppy and that we can go, be pals and have a beer if we just kind of get over the fact that we're trying to kill each other. It's not what I mean.
No.
What I mean is there's a tendency in this modern age to be very stupid how you regard, let's say, villains of history, where if you try to rationalize something, you're somehow condoning it, right? So I've encountered this in university when I try to talk about, let's do the ultimate fallacy, right? Hitler. You try to talk about Hitler on rational terms, it's going to make people very uncomfortable.
That's true.
And that's because I can rationalize Hitler for you. I know exactly why he did what he did, and it's very easy to understand. It may be repulsive, it may be immoral, but it's not something beyond the realm of understanding. That's what I mean.
So then...
It's not someone going, you'll never know what I'm doing, buddy. It's not like that.
Right.
Being able to consider
he needs a
idea
longer
without
mustache for that.
accepting it.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Luke.
Being able to consider an idea without accepting it. Who was it that said that?
Right.
Was that... Anyway.
I'm sorry.
It's...
Shae, you got it?
So I was gonna say I think that
where my problem comes in is when people try to do what you're saying, they go so far on the side of wanting you to fully understand every aspect of why this person does something to the point of acceptance. And there's a difference between understanding the mind of somebody who's crazy or evil and why they might choose to do something a certain way and accepting it. But because, especially in the world that we're living in and with these SJWs, acceptance is everything. If you can't accept that I want to live a certain lifestyle, date a certain person, act a certain way, whatever, then it's because you're a bigot and you refuse to understand, and I need to beat this into your head. And
well,
I think
a certain
that,
animal.
well, Shae, well, there's two parts to the SJW question, right? And this relates to character, right? There's what we talked about earlier, which is being stuck in your head and not making sense to other people, but to you, right?
Right.
That's the street level SJW. They are in a world of contradictions. They don't know if they're boys or girls. They don't know if up or down. Everything's inverted, and it often blows up in their face, and they're pissed off because of it. Right. But I'm talking about on the upper echelons. We're talking the George Soros level. The objective is very clear. It's power and control.
Mm-hmm.
And they aren't running around their head going, am I a man or a woman today? No, it's what currency do I have to manipulate today, and which groups do I have to give money to destabilize this country enough where I can either raid it for profit or I can control it. It's very simple. And the character's actions are going to be motivated by that.
Right. And I think that on that level, that makes perfect sense, where you can understand, because if you can't understand why somebody is going to do something, then you're never going to really buy into that character, because it's not believable. Everyone goes into motion with some kind of a motivating factor. Like, you don't just go do something for absolutely no reason. There is always a reason. Even if you say there isn't, there is always an underlying reason.
Someone in the chat just said trauma. There is always an underlying trauma. They're correct.
Nothing happens in a void.
I think a good example in fiction of the two we just talked about is Darth Vader and the Emperor. Yeah, right? Darth Vader is the SJW in the sense that he is lost in his own emotions and mind, and he is just doing the reducto ad absurdum of his choices. Right? The Emperor is the one who is moving things in a Newtonian fashion, right? He's the celestial body moving other things, putting the pieces where they belong, and Darth Vader is one of them. Mm-hmm. And you could see that conflict all through the films, especially in the second and third one, of Darth Vader lost in himself, right? And just playing out, the consequences of his own choices. And that's what you see with SJWs in the street. It's a bunch of disturbed kids playing out the consequences of what they think are good things. When they mix them together, it blows up in their face and they're pissed off about it.
Right. Yeah.
I can't believe all these good things, you mix them together and they blow up in your face. I never knew that.
I can't believe the things that I say or do actually have a consequence outside of what I want them to have.
Let me see. Revolutionary politics, sexual liberation, psychological manipulation. You mix those wonderful things together. What do you get? You don't get a souffle. You get an explosion.
Stabilization.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've heard Darth Vader called an SJW, and it somehow makes sense.
I mean, I guess in the context of
especially when you're looking at Anakin in the prequel, it totally makes sense. Oh God.
Wow.
No, I love what Peter Smetty in the chat saying. Hero and villain are both born from trauma. That's how you handle
dropping
it.
some knowledge.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's like it could be applied to everybody in life. Everything you do, the person you are, is how you handle things.
And let's take George Soros. When he was a young man, he was exposed to power as a young boy, as he was a Jewish helper to the Nazis, going around confiscating Jewish property. So as a young man, as a little boy, he was exposed to power, raw power, and what you need to do it, and what nationalism produces. And he became an enemy of nationalism, and he became an advocate of raw power.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
I was gonna say, I think that Phil is really onto something, and Peter obviously is the one that said it. But
every time he says raw power, I think of Iggy and the Stooges, though. Sorry.
Check your privilege and embrace the dark side, our friend says.
Well, it's a really interesting stance to think of, because it's what you do in the moments of trial and tribulation that determine the kind of person that you are, and that is true as humans. That is true.
I agree with you.
As people. There's people all these people that are trying to say, well, the reason that these people are so bad is because they had a rough life. I actually got into this argument with a guy at work who was trying to explain to me how I had white privilege and didn't have a voice that was allowed to be heard.
You're not white, you're fluorescent.
Right. I was like, I'm clear, first off. Thank you. So we got in this discussion, and he was like, you don't know what it's like to grow up like I grew up. And I said, okay, so let me pose this to you. Somebody who grew up with a family member that is addicted to drugs, and a dad that left at 3 and had to raise his sister and had to do all of this shit. And I was like, would you say that that's probably closer to what you've had to experience? And he's like, yeah. And I go, awesome. I just described a very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Who is white. Mm-hmm. So explain to me how, because you grew up in a similar situation to that, or maybe something even not quite as bad, the difference is that it has to do with skin color. It has to do with how you've internalized, what you've done with that, how hard you fought for what you wanted to get out of life, or if you just let people tell you that you're worth nothing and you decided to believe it, and that's what you went with. And granted, I understand that there are location differences and there's other factors that can play heavier on that, but it comes down to everybody has to make a choice in those moments. You have to decide, am I going to take the easier route of going with the shittier option? Because the shittier option is always the path of least resistance. The better option for you and for you to be a good person, that is never the easy option. That is always difficult, trying. You're going to lose friends. You're going to come out scarred, bruised, battered, but you will come out stronger on the other end if you can find a way to make it through.
Well, Shae, this will, and maybe Mike Odin will appreciate this, because I think he likes to think along these lines in terms of his stories, because he's a very big fan of mythology. There's been whole philosophical systems that have been designed to rationalize either pretty much your lust, right? What I want to do as opposed to what I should do, right? And so I think it comes down to, if we want to talk about, say, I don't know, let's keep the Star Wars example, where you have Anakin Skywalker. He's got a choice to make. He either sticks with the moral law and does what's right, or he does what his heart wants, which is to save Padme, right? And that's what I think is the story, right? He's this evil can offer him a way to save his love. Mm-hmm. So he's got a choice. You either do what the moral law dictates, or you bend the moral law to your desires. Yeah. Which one's it going to be? And I think that makes for great stories, right? Because the character is going to justify bending the moral law to what he wants.
Well, I mean, you brought up the whole thing of a great villain as a character that you can understand, rationalize the decisions that they made. And, Phil talked earlier about, I'm going to bring it back to Berserk. You've got Griffith. Griffith has this incredible, I think that one of the big things that Griffith is one of my favorite characters in fiction. And one of the big reasons for that is, he starts off as this guy that you root for, because you understand why he wants to, he's lived in the gutter his entire life, and he wants a kingdom. He wants to break the status quo, and it's something that you identify with. And then you get to the Advent, and he shatters, and the only way that he can move forward is to do this absolutely horrible thing. And people often kind of throw Griffith under the bus with the whole he didn't actually care about any of these people. But literally the entire time that he is in the metamorphosis process, it's the God hand using Griffith's humanity to convince him to throw it away. Because Griffith, throughout the every single time that you get more information on Griffith in Berserk, you find out
how many volumes is Berserk? I've actually
Oh.
never read this. Like I've learned more about this series listening to you talk about it than I have actually. You know,
so like it is starting to wrap up, and they're releasing leather bound collector bits, and they're awesome. I have the first 3 of them. They're each 500 pages. And so like they're on a release schedule. I think the next one is volume 5, and it comes out this.
All right.
And yeah, they're look at it. It's so pretty. But like, so like the every single time you find out more about Griffith, you find out that he has sacrificed his childhood to become this leader of this mercenary band, and has distanced himself because he wants to protect them. There's a big scene where they fight their first battle, and there's a little kid that dies that joined his band and like used to play with Griffith, and he sees this kid, and when you get to the Advent, the God Hand uses this child that Griffith has held on to as the manifestation of his guilt, to be like, you can't have this if you want your kingdom. You have to be willing to give it all away. You have to be able to shed your humanity if you want the kingdom. If you want to achieve your dream, you have to do this. And it's a huge misconception that Griffith doesn't care, because if he didn't, the sacrifice wouldn't mean anything. Because that's the whole point, is that all of the apostles, all of the people that go before the God Hand, they have to sacrifice something that they care about dearly.
Right. I think it's just that sacrificing something like that you care about deeply for what they can give you, it brings into question how much did you care. It's, you know what I mean? It's I don't think it's so much that he didn't care. It's that he didn't care as much as most people would care about human life.
Well, you also have to realize that at that point, Griffith had gone through what, a year and a half of being tortured, and was at a point where he couldn't even move on his own.
Right, but this is what I'm saying, is that's where the turning point is. So a lot of people seem to think that because something would be the right choice, that it is the easy choice. That's not
usually the opposite.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The easy choice is usually the choice that will eventually damn you. And that's not just storytelling, that's life.
No, but like that's what makes a good story, is having a decision like that is there. You know? And that's one of the big compelling things about Guts, is because no matter what happens, if he gets put before the God Hand, he still won't choose what they have to offer him, because he wants to do it himself.
Right. Yeah. That's really what makes the difference between a hero and a villain in a story, is that being faced with that and seeing what you choose.
Yeah, but like that goes into the whole thing again with what Will has said. You are able to rationalize the decision. Yeah. It wasn't the right decision. You can understand that.
Yeah.
What Griffith did was terrible. Nobody's denying that. But you can rationalize it.
I don't want to, but I can.
Yeah,
but I don't want to, because fuck him. He's a horrible person.
He's a horrible person, but like that makes it
strong emotions. I must say,
like he has earned every bit of hate.
It's rough, Luke.
He really
it's rough.
has. But like, I think that it's a testament just how well written he is as a character. And I like he's probably like him and Guts go back and forth as my favorite character of the book.
I'm gonna cut you off for just a second, because I'm realizing, Jerry, you've been awfully quiet.
Yeah,
I have.
Are you still in that library parking lot?
I am at the library parking lot, and I have gotten a text message saying that it's time to come home. So I think I'm going to have to bail at this moment.
Well, the
windows are all fogging up and everything. And you're right.
Cops are doing loops around the parking lot.
Excuse me, is there somebody in your lap? What are you doing there?
What's going on here?
Well, so I was actually going to say we're hitting about 2 hours. This is normally about when we would kind of wrap up, and I think that this
your mama can wrap up.
Huh?
I said your mama can wrap up.
Oh, damn. Well, it's getting feisty
Straight
over there.
1980s.
Oh, wow. Wait, that was Will that said that?
Yeah, I know.
I'm very
right?
unpredictable. I like to do that to throw you off, Shae.
He's an
I don't know
enigma.
what's happening. Everything just got weird.
See? You're in the military. You should know these tactics. Don't you read your son too?
Yeah, so I don't got anything for you saying my mama could wrap up because my mama would break your ass, but she's one hell of a woman. That's all I'm saying.
Giant.
Love you, Mom. You happen to randomly click on this.
Yeah, we just click on this one. She's like, she's gonna break your ass.
She'd be like, damn fucking right I am.
Damn right.
I don't gotta watch the rest of this show. So yeah, I think
it's about to turn into a snuff film or something.
Hail Mrs. Zombie, Mama Zombie.
Mama Zombie. I'm gonna tell her
Hail
that's
Mama
her new
Zombie.
name. So I think this is a good place to wrap it up. I feel like we had a lot of really awesome discussion. This was really, really fun. This was a good one.
Yes.
Yes, master.
Before we go, I'm going to let everybody have a chance to kind of plug. So we will start with Jerry, since he might be the one that has to leave the soonest if this takes too long.
Got to write
Hey,
on the window.
You know how it is. I wear the pants when she's not around.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. When she tells you that you can wear the pants, you wear them.
Okay, so you can find me at Jerry Unbound on Twitter. I also have a YouTube channel called Writing Comics, where I basically interview other creators so that, help get the word out about their books. And I'm also starting a pre-campaign for Evermatter, probably late June, early August. So I'll start collecting emails for Evermatter at that point.
Okay.
Good to meet you, Jerry.
It was good to meet you.
All right, Luke.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Death Metal Hero. Just the same name. I've got some old footage. You want to see a video of me interview Ethan Van Sciver way back in 2007. Go check out my channel. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Like,
did he have his silky voice then?
Oh, he was the same character he is now. He's more of that character now than he was back then. Like he was.
It's a little more reserved back then.
I'll tell you all
the
this.
Rush Limbaugh of comics.
No, we end the interview skipping off to go see the Ghost Rider film, which he still owes me a movie. Yeah, arm in arm skipping. I'm just saying, But yeah, good interviews. I got a bunch of stuff up there, but right now it's the nostalgia trip stuff, and then there will be new content soon. So yeah.
Awesome.
And also go Black Flag Pineapple Exception.
Yes.
My boy Frega Boom.
What?
And that wherever he is, that guy right there.
Wait, that way. Fuck. Damn it. I always mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, Phil. Just because you can do it correctly.
Well, listen, he's gotten a lot of practice. He's been doing a lot of streams recently.
True.
That big guy.
You know what? I'm not even gonna respond to that. I've got like 80 something shows now, but whatever.
Yeah.
Odin, go ahead.
Hey guys, thanks for having me out. Elysian Fields is up on Indiegogo. We're in demand right now, so give us a check out there. We also just set up our Facebook page for Nine Realms Publishing, my publishing LLC, for my own imprint. And thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, dude. Mr. Phil.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me on here. This was actually really fun. I'm glad I finally got to come on. And check out the Lost Pages. We just launched on Friday.
And this.
And yeah. And Magic Cop. Yeah. Magic Cop. We only have like 25 copies left to sell. So if you guys haven't gotten that, get that.
And they're signed.
They are signed by my brother and I.
So I'm the only uncool.
Yes, you are. You suck.
Damn!
You don't suck, Shae. You back
what?
the Lost Pages.
It's my job to keep you humble, Shae.
I'm excited to see Shae and her.
What
her
I'm
Lost
hearing is
Pages
I want to
now.
get hit.
Yeah, but she can't hit me. I'm over here.
One day.
Keep talking.
DGCon.
Exactly.
I have
she'll get me there.
Shae, if you want to share my screen, I just have the page up
Let's
here. So everybody check this out. We made 8K in 3 days, which I'm super ecstatic about. So
Go
check out.
sell
We got
out those Simon Beasley tiers, man. Go.
Yeah, we got 7 sold already. So there's only a total of 25 on there. And I wanted to show the awesome mask that Shae's going to be wearing.
I can't wait for this.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So
Have you guys done a show? Have you been on a show to do this book yet?
We did pre-launch.
Okay.
We'll have him on again a little later in his campaign.
Sure, that would be awesome. Yeah. But it's going to be huge. So get the book and the bonus book too, because that's the most content you're going to be able to get.
Which cosplay are you going to be from the book, Shae?
Oh gosh. So
you're going to have the mask.
The first time, who was it that I did the girl with the goggles?
Yeah, the goggles.
But I didn't have cool goggles going back, so it was kind of shit. I don't know who I'm gonna do the next time. I'm kind of digging silhouette, but that would be a lot of challenge. So we'll see.
A lot of makeup.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I'll make it work. You know, I'm dedicated. I don't know if you've seen the Grim Reaper stream. I painted like 50% of my body fucking red for that shit.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was nuts. It was awesome.
Commit to the bit. Hell yeah.
That's what I do. Same thing. I painted myself green for all of Preston's stuff because all of his characters are green, apparently. All right. Well, on to you, bud.
Well, as Luke was so gracious to say, I'm that guy who's working for Frege on Black Flag, Pineapple Perception. We are almost there to a 0.5 book, which is a whole nother book. So you get, more for your value. So please head over there and back it. And come on, man, you've seen the Rob Willis promos.
Yeah.
Don't you want to see that?
Listen, we need that book just for that Jay Lee cover alone.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Oh,
there you go.
God.
I mean,
Pat Lee.
It's going to be a lot of fun in addition to
Pat Lee.
Pineapple.
Yes. Thank you, Phil. Yeah, Pat Lee. Wow. No. Yeah.
But I'd like to have Jay Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's Cyberfrog Jay Lee cover, right?
Yeah.
But get
Pat
Black Flag.
Lee's part of the yearbook. He did the original, a story in the original. He did, I think, Geisha's story in the original.
Yes.
Oh,
Geisha's
cool.
story. It's Danger's favorite part. Is Pat Lee's geisha booty.
You got
the legs that go like all the way up the Tower of Babel.
Yes. Yeah, that exactly. Speaking of
in the
which,
chat, Gabe Gully asked how does he get a Magic Cop?
I just posted the link.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, so there's the link for you, Gabe. If you want to
I'm
check into
on
that.
this. Come on, Phil. I got
Thanks,
you.
Jay. You're a pro.
And Phil also does tripograms on the side, so he'll deliver it and he will perform for you if you get to.
You know what?
like
I'm
it.
terrified that you know that, and I don't want to know how you found out.
Make my money where I can.
Oh, so you're his pimp. Okay, cool.
Exactly.
Phil, make sure he doesn't screw you over, man.
Right?
I take 10% and I bail him out.
All right. Well, I, of course, am Shae Zombie. You can follow me at Gaslight. And please like, share, and subscribe to Red Valkyrie. We are getting ever closer to our 1K. And honestly, this is one of my favorite things to do. I will put off sleep for this. I will put off. I've called out from work for this just because this is way more entertaining and a better use of my time. And so definitely hit that sub button and, let's keep this shit going. And we will catch you guys next time. I'm super stoked. Next time we're going to go over editing. So make sure that you come check us out.
My favorite.
Right? Oh, goodness. Going to be good. All right. We will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for coming out.
See ya.